So today we're going to be talking about the future of pre-construction, connecting tools, teams, and data. So I'm sure you're all really familiar with this slide by now, but essentially do not take anything we say as a prediction of future events. Today, our speakers, I'm Sarah Weiss. I'm a product marketer here at Procore. Over the last 4 years, I've worked with many of you in the audience to help understand and deliver what the construction industry needs next. Joined on stage with, as many of you will recognize, Dave McCool, our Director of Product here at Procore, and John Cowles, VP and COO of Hathaway Dinwiddie. I'm going to let them do their own introductions later on, but just know that you have some powerhouses up here, and I'm really excited to hear from them.
Thanks, Sarah.
So as some of you may have heard Dave share in the keynote yesterday, Procore recently partnered with FMI on a study to better understand the state of pre-construction in the construction industry. Our findings were pretty exciting that, in fact, the construction industry is prioritizing pre-con. Out of the 5 choices, 600 out of the 1,000 contractor respondents responded that pre-construction was either their first or second most strategic area for investment in the coming years. Moreover, 250 of those 1,000 contractors identified pre-construction as their #1 area for investment. So let that sink in. Pre-construction is strategically more important than other areas of the business. That is ahead of financial management, and that is ahead of workforce management, which is pretty mind-blowing. So what we are not seeing are the benefits that investment has expected to make just yet. So we think that's because technology is not carrying its fair share. In fact, only 38% of respondents felt that they were highly satisfied with their own pre-construction technology. It's not that surprising when we look at the ranked challenges that the construction industry is still facing. So despite using pre-con technology, these were the 3 biggest challenges that respondents shared. Collaboration within stakeholders, followed by leveraging data effectively, and finally, the handoff from pre-construction to course of construction. So here's the thing, the same study showed us that your teams are actually able and willing to use technology when it works for them, and more importantly, you guys have really strong processes and systems in place around the discipline of pre-con. So once again, the problem is with the technology, that it's not supporting the way your teams work. So I love the laugh up front. So this is a model that current technology vendors are using, and it's really based off of a model that is not representative of the way that you work. So these technologies look at pre-construction as segmented, isolated, and honestly pretty linear and outdated at best. Seeing design and pre-con completely separated from pre-con and build. So this is a model that potentially could have been leveraged 20 years ago in a hard bid, low price win world, but that's not how you guys are working today, and we know that. When you separate design from pre-con and pre-con from build, you're losing a lot of information and you're isolating your teams and your data. So when you see that, you can compare it to the idea that pre-con and build are essentially and should be intertwined. When you think of that meeting, that painful pre-con meeting, where your handoff is essentially done and your pre-con team is left feeling disheartened and discouraged because that information isn't being passed to build, no one feels good about it. You're building friction between teams. Instead, in the model that we're trying to build, we see pre-con is essentially encompasses design. Those teams should be iterating and working together. The pre-con experience should be pulled throughout the entire life cycle of a project and shouldn't stop and start when a project ends. Instead, those learnings should be passed into the next project. If you buy into this model that pre-con and design as well as course of construction are intertwined and iterative, you also buy into the model that your pre-construction, project execution, workforce management, and financial management should all work seamlessly together on one platform. Your teams aren't isolated, so your technology shouldn't be either. With that, I'm going to pull Dave McCool up, and he's actually going to walk through some tangible examples of this.
Thanks, Sarah. All right. I'm Dave McCool, Director of Product. I'm not going to do a long intro because I want to make sure there's plenty of time for questions at the end. But I mean, the FMI, Sarah pointed out some of this, but the FMI report did show, and I think all of you know, that pre-con tools are pretty isolated right now. You have some that are good at, or I will use that term loosely, some do estimating, some do takeoff, some do bidding, some do coordination, some just do quantification. And what the FMI report also showed, which was interesting because we saw the raw data, is a lot of it is custom spreadsheets on your local machines for pre-construction. So a lot of isolation in the stakeholders, also potentially a lot of license management, which in and of itself is a pain in the ass and a headache. It isolates your stakeholders, isolates your data, all the things that we talked about. Not ideal for integrated projects. You might need integrated tools for integrated projects. And so what does this lead to besides a 38% satisfaction rating? Well, we know it leads to risk and rework and cost overruns, schedule delays, and increases the likelihood that you'd end up with an incident on your project. And that's not a stat, that's a fact. I mean, rework and safety are strongly correlated to each other. And so our vision at Procore is to improve the lives of everyone in construction, and so it starts in pre-con. John's going to get up and talk, and he's going to show the McLeamy curve. And I know a lot of you have seen it before, but the best chance we have at allowing you to achieve predictable and safer projects is in pre-con. And so that's what we're on a mission to solve. And so I'm going to switch over to Figma real quick, one of our mocks, so just bear with me. So in the keynote, I talked about, what we have what we've done in the last year for pre-construction and more near-term releases. And so I'm going to talk today, so thanks for the safe harbor. I'm going to talk more of like 12 to 18 months out, so a little bit longer out. But one thing to keep in mind, this is not stuff that we haven't built that I'm just like saying, hey, we're going to do these things maybe one day. You'll see in the top left, these are things that exist, and what I'm showing is the other things that we're building towards to create a truly connected pre-con solution for you. So I'm going to, let's make sure this is working first. So I'm going to take you through a design revision, right? I'm just going to take you through one design revision. You'll have plenty of these on a project, thousands of these, to walk you through what I mean by a connected pre-construction solution. And the story that I'm going to use is we're heading into a GMP. We've been trending the budget, and we're over budget. So we're going to make a recommendation to the owner, and we're going to watch that recommendation as it goes through our authoring to coordination takeoff, to estimating, to bidding, back to estimate refinement, and back to the budget. It's a design build project. So you got all the major stakeholders involved as far as MEPs, GC, architects, and engineers. And it is a GMP. You're bidding out to the ceiling specialty contractor. That is the trade that is most impacted by this design recommendation. Also, I can't help but take on the GC persona. So I go ahead and apologize, like any owners in specialty. I did GC for a long time, so if you hear me take on that, I apologize. I can't help it. So you're in a meeting. Right now, what exists today is you can go from estimates to budget. You'll hear me say that quite a bit. So the estimating tool pushes to budget. In our budget tool, you can take snapshots, and those can be trended in analytics. Now, while that exists today, it is an area of improvement for target value design. We want to continue to improve that so that you can manage and trend your budgets quickly and easier. But in the analytics tool, you can slice and dice the budget. You can trend your line items. And so in this case, you realize you're a little over budget, and you make the recommendation to the owner, hey, if we could change some of these ceilings to ACT and instead of hard lids, we can save money. And the owner's like, okay, let's make that change. So as I mentioned in the keynote, coming out this quarter is the ability for the designers to change the ceilings and save directly from Revit. Now on this slide, you'll notice it says authoring. We started with Revit, but that's not where we're finishing. In fact, on the plane to Groundbreak, I was testing this on the plane and made this video. So I actually have a build that has all the AutoCAD products that I'm supposed to be testing, but I've been busy the last couple of days and haven't been able to. So we're going to continue to make it easier for you to go from authoring to share into Procore. And I was meeting with structural specialty contractors last week, and obviously Tekla was top of mind. So we are looking into Tekla as well. The point here is that we do want to make it easy for you to get it inside the platform. These are robust applications that not everybody needs to install on their machines. And so once these files are saved into the platform, you remove the silos. No, there's no more silos. Everybody has access to the models, or can have access to it. Everybody can have access to coordination issues. Right now, you can do issues on drawings, and you can do them on models. And you're going to see us continue to refine that side panel that's showing right here. And as we look at implementing it on the models tool, and also on the new document solutions that we're working on if you haven't been by the Innovation Lab. One of the things coming out, for instance, in the next couple of weeks is the ability to comment in the models tool. So this may seem like something that would be far-fetched, a structural engineer talking to the mechanical detailer, but it has been far-fetched. It's been really hard for a structural engineer to have Navisworks or be in the coordination meetings, but there's no excuses anymore. They have access to the models, they have access to the issues, they're all able to collaborate. And so something as painful, I don't know how many of you have been burned by soffit drops and kickers, but once you've been burned by them, you never forget. So when you switch to ACT, having a structural engineer let you know, like, hey, you don't need those soffit drops and kickers anymore, so you don't have to move the mechanical main, can be a real conversation that happens as you're doing these design reviews. And if they're using the documents integration with Navisworks, those same conversations and same files are now coming into Navisworks. So there's no disconnect between the office that's kind of looking at it from a design review perspective and the teams that are really into the weeds, means, and methods in Navisworks doing clash detection and coordination. It's all the same conversations, same files. Additionally, what I talked about in the keynote was the ability to do takeoff. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this because what you see in the bullets is kind of this auto-updating and automation around these assemblies. And what I mean by that is we're going into beta this quarter. And we're obviously going to make a ton of improvements as we go through the beta program. That's the purpose. But there's some known knowns as we go into the beta program. One of those is making sure that when you attach an assembly, we can attach it at both the instance and the group of objects level. So I'm going to get kind of in the weeds for a little bit on Revit and how Revit works. So if you think about Revit, you've got categories, families, types, and then instances, right? So the category are kind of known. They're a set that's in Revit. So ceilings is one of the categories. The family, if you're using like the out of the box, I think it's composite ceilings or compound ceilings, I think is the name of it. And then your type is 2x4 ACT, for instance. We want you to be able to attach the assembly to that 2x4 ACT. So as soon as you get a model, it knows that link and tells you the plus delta. So as soon as you're getting new models in the system, you're seeing the plus delta on both the quantities and your estimates, your detailed estimates. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be working towards as we go into this space of 3D takeoff and estimating. We talked about this, right? The estimator spends all this time creating a takeoff and a scope of work that they need to bid out, but they have to manually go put these same line items into a bidding application. So we want to fix that, obviously, and make sure that the data is connected so that you can go from your estimates and all that work that you did straight into the bid form to streamline the bid package creation process for the ceilings, for instance. And again, we talked about this in the keynote, the Procore construction network. So now instead of having to maintain all the collaborator information in your account, now we have a network of 60,000 that's only going to increase over the next 12 to 18 months. That starts to remove the burden, which I know a lot of you have asked about, of managing that collaborator information in your account to collaborators managing their information in the network account and linking too. So that's also going to improve the bid flow and invitation process. One thing I didn't talk about that I did want to spend some time on is the bidder experience. So if you've purchased estimating, you've gotten a first look or early access to our bid board. This is a lightweight CRM. It allows you to see all the opportunities you've been invited to, access the bid documents right there in your bid board, and decide if you want to bid on the project. Now, this is available to anybody that's purchased estimating, but this quarter we're going to be launching this on the network. It means anybody that's on the network gets it for free. So they'll have a lightweight CRM that they can use to organize all their opportunities that they've been invited to, access the documents without downloading them. They don't have to log into a solicitor's account. It's their account. And then they're going to have the option in the next year, next 12 to 18 months, to add on the takeoff and estimating piece to BidBoard. So that means that they're going to have the same capabilities that you have if you have estimating and takeoff, so that they can get faster, more accurate estimates back to you. And they'll get all the improvements we make to takeoff and estimating in their BidBoard, all connected. They also can bid in BidBoard. Now, this is a behavioral thing because we'll talk about the connected Precon story, but there is a behavioral thing where people like to send PDFs and emails. So they can download a PDF and they can email it to you, and then we can automatically extract that email or PDF attachment out of the email. We can do that, and maybe we can get creative with making that more automated. But if they use a connected system, they don't have to log into the solicitor account. They can do it right here. If they submit through the BidBoard, then we can help streamline the process for the solicitor and make sure that they're responding in the same format you want, so it goes right into bid leveling. Wouldn't that be nice? But again, it's a behavioral thing, so that we'll have the technology ready for it, but there's still that, I want to send an attachment in an email that you're going to have to work through. This is going to require some change to get to a connected Precon. But this should help so that you don't have to open up all those PDFs and then manually enter all those numbers into an Excel spreadsheet. It's disconnected from everything. And then I'm going to steal some quotes from John, who's about to get up and present. He likes to say, well, you got to tune the budget. He might say it today, but I'm going to say it first. I'm going to say tune the estimate. So you do need to tune the estimate. So once you went out with your internal quantities and costs and units, now you got real ones because it came in through the bid, and you need to refine that in your estimate. So you want to make sure that you can bring those back into your estimate before you go full circle and push it back to budget and trend again to make sure you're back on track. Right? So a full flow from budget to authoring, takeoff coordination, estimate, bidding, estimate, refinement to budget to make sure you're back on track. Now, I used to have a slide in here that said, well, this is a 25-day or 30-day savings. John and I talked about it, and John was like, yeah, you could probably do that. I deleted it because here's the thing. If I had that up here, maybe some people would agree with me, but some people would say, oh, it's maybe like 2 or 3 months. And then some people would say, Dave, you're full of shit. So it really depends, because one of the things is you don't know if you're going to come in at conceptual. You don't know if you're coming in at schematic. You don't know if you're coming in at DDs. In all likelihood, owner pulls you in at 75% CD and says, I want the same level of care and effort that you gave me if I brought you in at conceptual. You have to adapt, which is what I mentioned in the keynote. So with connected tools, you could do just this, right? If you're using models, you could just be pushing from authoring into documents and using it for clash detection and coordination in Navisworks. Or you could be running some takeoffs and just trending some quantities. But you might as well do this if you're doing quantities, because takeoff and estimating are very tightly coupled. So you could go to a detailed estimate, and you could do this daily if you wanted to, or weekly, whatever cadence you want. You could do this, where you're trending the budget and going through analytics so that you can have those open conversations with designers and the owner on where you're trending before a milestone set. So in between these milestone sets, you're doing this on a weekly or monthly basis. And for good and for bad, I think everybody's been on one of these jobs. You go all the way through, you get to the bid, you bring it back in, and you go, we got a bust. And you don't want to go to budget and have the conversation. You need to go back to the drawing table and fix some things and then take it around full circle. Right? And another thing I would point out is this is not just a BIM-specific thing. There's nothing preventing you from doing the same thing with 2D. Right? But if you have models, then obviously it streamlines a lot of the takeoff and estimating process. But it's going to be a hybrid. Just, it's not like we're just shifting to 3D all of a sudden and now everything's 3D. We've been talking about that a long time. That's just not where we are. So it will be a hybrid. And then as we transition to course construction, I'm going to steal another John quote. Data rides for free. The documents ride for free, right? So the documents are going to live, you got versioning, so they cross over pretty well from Precon to course construction. But estimating can push to financials to the budget tool. Bidding can push to subcontractors today. Coordination issues can also push to observations. And I would love, if we have time in Q&A, I had a story, but we're going to run out of time, to ask a question, because I really want people to understand. I think you get the first two, but the whys behind coordination issues to observations and why we did that. So I'd love to explain it more in the Q&A if we have time. So if we go back to the vision of Procore, it's to improve the lives of everyone in construction. We know that starts in pre-con, right? We want to eliminate the silos that exist so we can reduce the rework and waste and make sure that we're helping you deliver safer, more predictable projects. And we do that by connecting your teams, tools, and data so that you can have integrated tools for integrated projects. So I'm going to quit talking now. I'm going to let John come up, who has been leading pre-con at Hathaway for 35 years. Over 35 years. He is the COO. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I might have like 2 minutes on you.
Okay.
I might.
I just want to make
Maybe.
sure I'm set up.
I'll try to shorten it, but I can't say enough good things about John. If you haven't met John, you have to meet John either right after this or at some point find him tonight in Counting Crows, or he'll be with me. No. So John, he's a pioneer. He has been leading Hathaway. He brought advanced pre-construction to Hathaway, brought 3D takeoff into their program very early on, and has also, outside of running Hathaway, he also teaches. He's been teaching at universities for over 20 years. UCLA, University of Southern California.
Yep.
Built some of the coolest projects. Hang on, I just got to go back to the slide deck for a second. Let's go to presentation mode. There we go. Hang on, I got to present this. This is John on top of Salesforce, right? And so he has been giving back, like I said, to the industry. Been teaching at USC, teaching at UCLA. He says he's retired. That's fun, because the last 2 months he has been on Tuesday nights from 5 to 7 teaching our whole pre-construction division pre-construction, so that we can be better informed to build these tools for you. So he just continues to give back and give back. We can't thank you enough for the partnership, and really, really appreciate it. So, John Cowles, everyone.
All right. Oh boy, I don't even know how to do it.
Let me
Yeah, help me out. This is different.
Oh yeah, I got to switch back. That's my fault. There you go.
All right. As Dave said, I've been in construction for 35 years with the same company, so I've never changed. And so, anyways, our mission is to be the builder of choice. And so the idea there is really, when the owner's thinking of building a building in California, they think of us first. We're the first choice. And so when you wrap that up into a whole organization, it's like, what do you have to do? What kind of systems do you have to build? What kind of people do you have to, and leadership do you have to deliver to be the builder of choice? And so it's really one of our big rallying cries. The other one we have is our BHAG. If anybody knows what a BHAG is, it's a big, hairy, audacious goal, and that's to build 20 iconic buildings in 20 years. And it's a good vision of a project we're in the middle of right now. That's the Lucas Museum of Narrative Arts in Exposition Park. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but that building has about 12 systems that have never been built before, including the skin system, which is a complete FRP panel, 320,000 square feet of FRP panel. Structural systems, glass elevators, it's unbelievable. But those types of projects transform your company. They push them forward. You have to develop techniques and innovation to really start to deliver iconic buildings. And that's why it's become our BHAG. It's going to push us off into the future. One of the big investments that we make in is a dedicated pre-construction staff. We've found that in order to build these iconic buildings, in order to really push the limits of construction, you have to have people that are dedicated up front to high-performing pre-construction tasks. We need to start early in the process as possible. The later we start in the process, the harder it is to make the changes and the recommendations that make these jobs successful. You have to have formal processes, and you have to involve all the stakeholders. It's not just a little piece of the pie. Everybody has to be involved. We're shifting from a confrontational, hard bid mentality to a collaborative, get it done mentality. And it's really transforming our industry. And our tools need to evolve into that way as well. And one of the tools that we need to evolve in is technology. We need to apply that technology to provide that collaborative environment that allows iconic projects to move forward. When I started over 30 years ago, it was an estimating department. There was 3 to 4 estimators. We didn't really mingle much with the rest of the company. We were kind of in a back room, little green visor, counting doors, and then extending those out against unit prices and coming up. We mostly did hard bid, but that's all changed. And the other thing is nobody wanted to really be an estimator, right? That's where you kind of went to. That's changed. We've gone from estimators to pre-con managers to pre-con engineers. Our pre-construction staff is 12 to 16, right? Somebody out there is going to say, they're going to do the math. Oh boy, that's going to hit the overhead pretty hard. And it does. It does. But if you're building high performance teams, if you're building iconic structures, you need to make the investment. You're not going to be able to roll up 8 weeks after bid and start these projects. It takes years of planning, budgeting, and solving problems. And so there is a lot of value in investing in dedicated pre-construction teams. A lot of times, pre-construction is what you do when you're in between jobs, right? And that's all good, but it doesn't create consistency. It challenges your credibility because you're not able to maybe deliver that consistent pre-construction effort. And so your pre-construction effort wanes up and down. Enthusiasm isn't consistent. Credibility gets hit, and we all know that's the worst thing that can get hit in our industry is your credibility. Long time to build, and a lot time to rebuild after you've had a mistake. We like to start as early as in the process. We've started projects before the architect. Those are the fun ones, because then you get to be the architect and then you estimate it. But the earlier in the process we start, the better we have to affect the final outcome. And the less it's going to cost the owner to deliver that. And so these decisions that we make in conceptual and schematic drawing phases really affect the final product, but at a much lower cost than if we made those same changes further on down the road. These changes are now extending beyond cost. So we're incorporating carbon footprints into our estimates now. And so as we go and as we estimate, we evaluate the effect of the building process has on the planet. And that's something a lot of our clients really are looking for. And so pre-construction has really shifted into this kind of all-in look at the built environment. And so again, changing our ways, expanding our thoughts, and getting the right people looking at these and solving these issues earlier on in the process really makes a difference. And it is a defined process. At the end of every budget or every at every drawing iteration, conceptual, schematic, DD, we're doing budgets. And we're comparing back to the previous budget. And it takes consistently looking at that budget to find issues and to be able to explain exactly what happened from one budget iteration to the other. And so we deliver high levels of detail earlier on. That also helps us pinpoint. It creates the roadmap of what's changed from one budget to the other. And we're able to explain that to our owners. And again, securing our credibility. We had, in the latest run-up, anybody have any budget problems? Escalation. And so we had projects that were going up. So we had projects going up, 10, 20 million at a shot. And it's a really hard, sad story to go into an owner and tell them, hey, what we gave you last time is up 20 million. But having the detail, having the right level of budget, the dedicated personnel to tell the story, you're able to work your way through that and work your way out of it. And 9 times out of 10 for us, it was, well, we don't like it, but we get it. We were able to tell the story and provide the backup that it took to secure and keep our credibility as pre-con managers. We have a very, very defined budgeting cycle and process. So at each budget, the first thing that we start off with is our budget, the Hathaway Dinwiddie budget. And so we'll go through, we'll get quantities out of our model, we'll talk about that in a second, extend it against unit prices, and produce the Hathaway Dinwiddie budget. From the Hathaway Dinwiddie budget, that gets turned over to the owner, the architect, and the other stakeholders. They review the budget. Sometimes there's outside cost consultants, that's always fun. And they'll look at our budget as well. The end of that process, the Hathaway Dinwiddie budget is transformed to the project budget. We have buy-in from everybody on what the budget and scope is of the drawings that we just finished. From that benchmark, we move forward with value engineering, because I don't know about you, but most of those budgets are never where they're supposed to be that first time. So we're going to VE it from the benchmark budget. We VE it. That VE process gives us a nice list of drawing changes that need to happen in order to achieve the budget. When we publish the VE budget, that becomes the next budget that we compare back to through the next 4 to 6 months of drawing development. And so it's a very, very distinctive, defined process. It engages all the stakeholders and really helps develop that team that's going to drive into construction and really create a successful, iconic structure. We involve all the stakeholders, and so including subcontractors, because I always say, I don't know everything in construction, but I know where to go to get it. And so that's our subcontractors and our trade partners. And so involving them early on as well in the process so that we get their take on the budget as well. It's one thing to have a database, I call it the science of estimating. Unit prices, or quantities, unit prices, extension, right? But how do you know if that number is right? Well, you get the subs involved, they'll help you tell you it's right for that project, for that market condition, for what you're building. And so you've got to involve your trade partners in this process of developing these high performance teams. At the bottom here is the Hathaway Dinwiddie team though. There's a really, and I'm going to bring out the old three-legged stool of a milking stool, right? But in pre-construction, it's very, very, oh wow, we're going fast. Sorry, I better crank it up. We need all three stakeholders. The pre-construction manager is looking at the budget, making sure we don't have any scope gaps or double ups. We've got the project manager who's looking at business terms, and we've got the superintendent who's really focused on workforce, schedule, safety. Without any one of those persons in the room, it's really hard to get your complete focus and buyout. We have and for us, we started off with model-based estimating in 2004. We started with Autodesk Revit. We got rid of all our on-screen takeoffs and have been using Revit ever since. We don't do takeoffs, we build models. Every one of those 12 estimators in LA and 10 in San Francisco, including myself, can build a model and strip enough quantities out of it to provide an estimate. When we have a workflow that supports it, why do we do that? It minimizes time to do the takeoff. The idea is to really minimize that time, and Dave's tools are going to help us do that. Minimize the time we spend on takeoff. If you go back, takeoff is probably about half of the time it takes to do a budget or an estimate. And so let's squeeze that so we can use the rest of the time to focus on the numbers, focus on the material pricing. It allows for us to identify risk and visualize it, but most importantly, by using model-based workflows, we standardize the data sets from one job to the other and take away that how estimators have their own little way of doing things, right? We try to strip that out and standardize that data set. Now this data becomes usable from one project to the next. And what makes a model-based estimating possible is we had to reimagine estimating. We're all used to doing line item estimates. What makes model-based estimating possible, and you saw it in Dave's presentation, assemblies. So in assemblies is where the model and the estimate connect. The assembly derives all the quantities. Everything below or above the assembly level, we have a 6-level hierarchy. Everything above the 4th level is the assembly level, is too large of a system to model and price. Everything below is too detailed. And so you don't waste your time modeling that. And so at the assembly level, you make the connection, and everything below that is derived parametrically. And so when we look at that, I missed the slide here. And so a good example is think about form work, right? How would you don't have to model form work to get the quantities of form work. You can base it on your foundation dimensions that come out of the model, Revit, or whatever modeling program you have, and parametrically derive them. And so this takes away this notion of, hey, these models will never be detailed enough for me to estimate them. Well, we've been doing this since 2011, and I'm telling you, you can do it. You parametrically can derive quantities to enough level of detail to provide highly detailed estimates directly from the model. These are some models that were built by our pre-construction team. We divided the team up into a structural team, a facade team, an interiors team, and a site team. These drawings didn't even exist. This is off of basis of design. And so we actually read the basis of design and designed the building to a high level of detail, connected it through our estimating platform, and produced this. So here is our estimating software. Upper left corner is the quantities. Upper right corner is the model. That same model you were just looking at. The bottom is the listing of line items or assemblies and line items. You can highlight these 2-hour shaft walls and see that it's $3,800,000. Not only are you getting a price, but you're getting the visualization of what that price represents. And that's the power of model-based estimating. Visualized and standardized data sets are what we're after. And so being able to actually tell the budget story loud and clear as to what are our main drivers, what do we have to pay attention to. And so here you can see there's 4 trades on the left-hand side that are going to represent pretty close to 40% of the work. So if we're going to look at risk, if we're going to look at budget reduction, if we're going to look at controlling the project moving forward, those are the 4 trades we're going to be able to, those are the trades we're going to focus on. And visually, it's pretty clear what we have to do here. And so those visualizations and the visualization of data is an extremely important part of what we're trying to do. The advantages: process standardization, detailed estimates earlier in the process, standard data sets across multiple projects. Most importantly, credibility, lots of credibility. When you're delivering information at high levels of detail, you develop a high level of credibility. And it's been very, very successful. We started off with a model-based workflow in 2011 and haven't ever looked back. What I want to do is challenge this group, right? What is the future of pre-construction? When I taught at USC, my idea, and I taught this model-based workflow, my idea was to teach the future builders what the future of construction is, not the way we've been doing it for the last 20 years. And so what I want to do is challenge this room, challenge everybody in here to really project ourselves out 5 and 10 and 20 years. What do you see as the future of pre-construction? Well, I'll tell you what I see. I see data analysts instead of estimators, people going into models, manipulating the data within them, extracting that for your own use, whether it's scheduling, cost, price, whatever. And so there's so many more things that I don't see paper. Do you guys see 2D drawings? I don't see 2D drawings in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. At some point, 2D drawings will be by the wayside. And so this is the room. These are the leaders. Let's get there sooner than later, because let me tell you, it's going to be a lot better to transition into pre-con. It's going to be a lot better to round-trip data through your estimate, through the construction process, and coming back if we can get there sooner. And one of the really cool things is having the model and or whatever become the sole source of truth for quantities. In today's world, the estimator does his quantities, the project controls do their quantities, scheduling does their quantities. Why not have one source of truth, the model, and have that model drive those quantities all the way through the process, and we're always talking about the same thing instead of everybody's own view of what that same thing is. And so with that, we're going to go to Slido, and while we're doing Slido, we'll take questions. But the Slido is this. Go ahead and log in if you want to participate and give me your one-word description of the future of estimating or pre-construction. What would you say it is, right? Connected.
Well, don't give them bias, John.
Whatever it is, right?
Creating bias.
But part of the learning process is really participating. So give us your one-word description of the future of pre-construction. And with that, we're done. Not totally done, but we got questions, we got answers. So let's open it up.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Go for it.
Oh, we can go back.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I think it's still going to work.
Hello? Question?
There we go. Yeah, you have a question?
How do I get my estimating team to stop ignoring VDC?
I've got an answer, but you.
I'll tell you how we did it.
Yeah.
And it's probably too late. But we never created a VDC department. Our VDC happens in pre-construction. And so we didn't create a separate silo. And so one of the ways of doing it, in my opinion, is try to see how you can meld those silos together and kind of bring them together as one.
And well, let's see if there's another question, or I'll pile on this. Okay, go ahead, Pat. Yeah. So that's a great question, thank you. We were Conversations V1. And the Conversations team kind of took what we did as inspiration to do Conversations. Now, our Conversations and activity feed in BIM has BCF compliance. It has a lot more than your regular chat, right? So we don't want two separate things, to your point, but we need Conversations to get, it's open now, so everybody try it. As it gets better, we're going to be looking at how do we make those two the same. But yes, you're right. It's just a little bit more robust than what's a chat feature. Yeah. Good question.
The architect's controlling the model, or doing your quantitative estimates, all of that. I imagine there's going to be some type of overlap where they don't do the assemblies to exactly what you're wanting. So that's how you deal with potentially adding data or adding assemblies to a model that's driven by the architecture team instead of your in-house.
So we call that supplemental modeling. And so we have understand from day one that the models aren't going to come perfectly clean from the architect. In the early days, there were architects that weren't even in Revit, right? And so the idea is what do you do now from a pre-construction or an estimating point of view? You supplement it. You do your own thing, whether it's a side sketch or trace over something on screen. And so we would do the same thing. We create an estimating model. We create a pre-construction model off of whatever we get from the architect. And if we don't get anything from them that's worth anything, then we'll build it ourselves.
We out? Are we out of time?
We are out time. We want to be respectful of the next session to give them time to set up. But you can find Dave in...
We'll go outside.
We'll go outside the
step
doors if you have
outside,
any one-on-one questions you want to
to
ask.
the next so they can.
Oh, yeah. And thank you.
Thank you.